Alright, now let's move on to creating the arms. I add a cube, press W to move it up until it's close to the body. Then switch to the front view and turn on wireframe mode. I push it inside the robot's body, right where the arms should start. Now I isolate it so I can work easier. Select the bottom vertices and move them down a bit. Let's make it a bit thinner. Since the arms should be slimmer, I stretch it a bit more vertically to keep the length right. Next, I add another cube, scale it down, move it below the upper arm. And from the front view, make it a bit tighter. In the Edit Mesh menu, I'll open the Edge Loop window, set it to multiple mode and change the number to 2. Then I turn on symmetry on the x-axis and move the edges a bit outward. Now I'm gonna select these faces and hit Ctrl E to extrude. Then I'll push the local translate Z to a negative value. It just needs you drag the handle inward or downward a bit. Alright, next I select the faces on both sides again, press Ctrl E and set the offset to around 0.1. Even a little less, maybe it looks better. Then one more Ctrl E to extrude again and push those faces inside. Make sure you don't go too far or the faces will start intersecting each other. Now if we press 3, you can see it already looks kinda like the wheels we're trying to make, but the shape is a bit too round. It doesn't have those sharp transitions yet, so I select the edges that I want to bevel. Double check from every angle to make sure nothing's missed. Then press Ctrl B to bevel. I don't want the edges to be too sharp either. Now the arm also needs some edge loops. So I hide the wheels to make it easier to see what I'm doing. Press 3 again to preview the smooth version. Then add some edge loops. Set it to relative distance from edge. Add one near the bottom and one near the top. We need 2 loops here to keep both sides nice and clean. This one's gonna be the cylinder, and this one here is the joint. Now I make a copy of the cylinder and move it down under the joint. Add a cube. press R and scale it down. Press W and move it higher under the second cylinder. Make it tighter and rotate it about 45 degrees on the x-axis. We don't need the side faces, and these back ones can go too. We only need to model one side, we'll just mirror it later. Looking at the reference, it needs to be a bit narrower from the side view. Press Ctrl E to extrude it and give it a little thickness. Pull the middle edge out a bit so the center gets thicker. I will also scale the top and bottom in a little. In this sketch, the arm looks a bit longer and more open, so I match that angle here too. And edge loop here and one more at the bottom. Now switching to face mode, I will grab these inner faces and extrude them inward. Just drag the gizmo, the pivot, toward the inside. Let's make a copy of these two parts. Select both, go to Edit Mesh, Duplicate. Since the faces were separate, they turned into two different objects. So I go to Mesh, Combine, and merge them together. Now let's freeze transformation, delete all history. Make it tighter. Next, select it and hide the inner part. Go to Edit Mesh, append to Polygon, and close up this open section. Okay, press Edge to unhide the inside again. Now I grab the top and bottom vertices and scale them in a bit with W. Not quite right, it should just be a bit slimmer overall. Add one edge in the middle, one more at the bottom. We don't need these extra things. so I delete them. Then I use append again to close up these areas. Well, I duplicated it and naming it inner part. And this one I call hand. Now press Ctrl B to bevel it. Set segment 2. And fraction to 0.1. I lower it a bit. Maybe it looks better with a smaller value. Then press R and scale the hand in a little from the side. Now duplicate the hand and bevel it again. It looks too curved, so I set the segment to 2 and fraction to 1. I lower it a bit. Maybe it looks better with a smaller value. Next, we need a joint down here to connect the hand to the character's arm. So I duplicate the previous piece, move it down with W and press R, scale it down a bit. Select these two parts and group them. Then name the group hand. After that, hit freeze transformations, delete all history, and finally center pivot. Now in the side view, place it right where it should be. Then hit freeze transformations again, delete all history, hold down D and move the pivot to the center. In the channel box, I give scale Z a negative value. Oops, I should made a copy first. Yeah, we need to duplicate it first. Alright, I think it should be a bit thinner. Yeah, that looks better. So delete the previous one. Then again, freeze transformations and delete all history. Our pivot is already centered. Make a copy with Ctrl D and give it a negative scale Z. Now select both sides and group them. The upper arm is a bit longer. If you look at the side of the hand in the reference, it's a bit shorter. Press 3 to exit smooth mode so I can select the vertices more easily. Grab the lower section and move it up a little. Then, in order to match it, the rest of the parts need to move up too. Scale down the upper joint a bit using R. Now select the whole hand section and group it. Hit freeze transformations, delete all history, and remove any empty group. Well, name this one hand source and keep this as a backup. So later if I want to work on a base model, I have it. Hold D and move the gizmo pivot to the top of the arm. Then make a copy with Ctrl D, hide the original source, and on the new copy, switch to wireframe mode so I can see where the eyes are. Then rotate the arm about 45 degrees on the Y-axis. Next, duplicate the source again to create the second hand. It's a bit longer and also thinner. Scale down the upper arm because I want it to look slimmer. But it still needs to feel elongated. If you look closely at the sketch, the lower joint of the second arm sits slightly lower. So scale down the forearm, move it below the upper arm, and adjust the joints accordingly. The forearm also needs two more wheels. One close to the mesh of the hand and another near the elbow. Now we'll move the palm area a bit lower. Hold D, move the pivot to the center of the wrist joint. There is slight angle in both arms, so I adjust that too, including the right one. Then freeze transformation and apply rotation. Pull the wrist out just a bit, like how a human wrist slightly stick out when bent. One of them needs to be bent, so select everything below the elbow. Press G to group them, then again freeze transformation, delete history, and center pivot. Hold D, move the pivot to the middle of the grid, then move it up until it aligns with the elbow joint. So the forearm can rotate correctly from there. Now for the palm section, select it together with the upper joint, group them, and repeat the same process. This time, leave the pivot right in the center of the upper joint. Then rotate the whole arm a bit. Check it from the perspective view. Make sure the bend shape matches and looks natural. Might need a bit of position adjustment. Now from the elbow, I rotate it. And finally, rotate the wrist until it sits in the right position. Alright, let's unhide the first arm so we can compare and align them together. Select the edges around this part and expand them. Symmetry is on, that's why it's not working properly. It's not expanding evenly in all directions. So I turn symmetry off, select the inner faces and open up the mouse area manually. Alright, now let's move on to the third and final arm. Take a copy of the source hand using Ctrl D. Keep the original one, just hide it. Might come in handy later. Alright, let's go to the side view. This arm is longer than the previous one and has a bit of cone shape. It's wider at the top and narrower at the bottom. So scale the bottom in and enlarge the top vertices. Now looking at the lower cylinder, the forms are kind of blending together. Nothing really clear. Enable isolate mode. This part of the palm here aren't needed, so I delete them. Then move the joint also duplicate the cylinder. Make it much smaller and shorter. Next, add a cube, scale it down, turn symmetry on in X, and lower it high. It should be pretty flat. Then scale it in from the sides, make it thin, and place it right where it needs to be. Select the top face, press Ctrl E, and lower the offset. Then again Ctrl E, and this time give it a bit of thickness. Scale it in slightly from both sides. Now duplicate this wheel piece. It's supposed to connect to something like this rectangular base that moves around it. Scale it down so it doesn't stick out from that section. Now let's bevel this base plate. I set the segment to add an edge loop, go into isolate mode, select the faces in this area and extrude them inward. Now delete any extra objects, select the whole group, hit freeze transformation, delete all history, and center pivot. Hold D, move the pivot upward. Like before, everything below the elbow will become a new section that moves based on the upper joint. The elbow joint, And the next section, repeat the same process. This part also has a small extra piece, a small joint connected to that rectangular part. Group that as well. This one's already centered, so we don't need to move the pivot. Now rotate it upward on Y, move it slightly, give it a bit more angle. The lower level needs to be a bit shorter. You can see the whole arm should be rotated a bit more. And this section also needs some adjustment. Let's check it from different angles. Well, looks like they're too close together. And from some views, it doesn't look great. Try to adjust the composition. So it looks good from multiple angles and also stays faithful to the concept.